our main guest of honour for this evening. But first of all, that is Gavin Pearce MP. The big man, yes. And as he's coming up, as you know, Gavin has been a member of the House of Representatives since 2019 federal election now. My, how time flies. He's a member, of course, who represents, well, not just the division of Braddon, but the whole of Tasmania. I'm going to, uncomfortably, while you stand there, Gav, say a few more words about you. So in October 2018, it was Gavin who won pre-selection for the division of Braddon, and at the 2019 federal election, he defeated the incumbent Labor MP, Justine Keay? Nobody knows how to pronounce that. With a 5-point swing on the two-party preferred count. We all know that he was re-elected resoundingly at the 2022 election, and so he is very welcome to the stage tonight. As you know, he has many roles and parliamentary service. And so, Gav, I would like you to invite our main guest of honour tonight, who is going to speak and address our State Council at this gala dinner. So thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you, and it's great to see the room so full. I'd like to give another round of applause for all those great volunteers, all those great award recipients that we saw earlier. So, really well done. I said earlier that, it's an honour to be with you here. I don't get down to Hobart enough, I really don't. It's probably not my favourite place, to be honest, but nevertheless, everyone has to be somewhere and I'm here tonight, so the company is good. But I do love my great electorate of Braddon, the northwest, the west coast and King Island, and I'm passionate about it, and I think everybody knows that. I'm here, of course, tonight with an honour in welcoming my good friend Jane Hume to the stage. But I think, Jane, the last time you were down, in fact, I think that was during the campaign, you were relentless in your support for me up there on the northwest coast. And Jane had visited the electorate, and we were at Home Hill, the home of Dame Enid and Joe Lyons in Devonport. And I'd like to acknowledge Lynn Laycock and the work that you do for that foundation. I'd also like to acknowledge our Dame Enid branch that does their fantastic work each day. But if you remember, I took you out to the garden and we sat on that white chair. There's a white chair that Dame Enid had set up outside the living room. She did it herself. Most of that garden was prepared by Dame Enid herself. And I took you out there and I told you the story of me sitting on that stool a couple of days earlier where I, during the campaign, they wear you down. And I had an absolute gutful this day, and I went up, drove the car up to Home Hill by myself, and I sat in the garden for 10 minutes. I just needed some time out. And on my phone, there's a podcast of Dame Enid's first speech. And I listen to it often. It gives me strength, and it reassures me that I'm on the right track. And I got it out this day, and I listened to it. And here we are, sitting, it's almost like a Forrest Gump story. So we're sitting on this white, you can imagine, with my good friend Jane. I told her how much Dame Enid meant to me. And I told her how much strength that she still delivers to me each day. And the main thing that I get out of that speech is how very grounded she was. I mean, she was our first woman into the House of Representatives. She was our first woman into our cabinet. And still, that speech just oozed every single word. You could feel how grounded and how humble and how solid she was. And you could feel it in every word. She talked about the importance of families. She talked about the importance of services to women and children and community. She talked about the role that she had in representing her electorate. But most of all, she talked about them. Them, the ones that put her there, the ones that she was there to represent. She talked about them. And I think that's why Dame Enid means so much to me, is because she never lost that. Now, back in those days, this is 70, 80 years ago, Menzies had his forgotten people. Howard later on had his battlers. Scott Morrison had his quiet Australians. Call them what you like, and I'm sure there's a smart politician somewhere that will come up with another catchy term. Guy, you're working on it? It matters not what that label is. No, I don't necessarily agree with the label. I think as a party, what I agree with, what I'm so staunch about, what I'm so passionate about, is that we think of them first, and that's why we're here. And I mean that so sincerely. And as I told this story to Jane, I knew I was preaching to the choir. I could tell by her knowing eyes. And I knew that she got it. In fact, that's probably why she was sitting on the bench with me in the middle of a campaign in northwest Tasmania and not in her own state. She was there helping others. She gets it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to hope and I'd like to pray there's a little bit of Dame Enid Lyons in all of us. And Jane, in you, I see her strength, and I mean that. Your passion, your drive, and the way that you deliver that selfless service every day of your life. The way that you, even for a senator, you could consider them. And that is what is important to you. I share that passion. I respect you as a colleague, and I am honoured to have you as a friend. And ladies and gentlemen, we are honoured as a state to welcome Senator the Honourable Jane Hume.
That was a lovely introduction, Gavin. I'm quite touched. You missed something though. When I sat next to you on that chair and you saw those knowing eyes of mine, it was in fact bewildered. I was bewildered. And the reason why I was bewildered was because Lynn had recently shown me around Home Hill, and I had learnt that Dame Enid did everything herself. You know, every single room was, oh, well, this wall was knocked out by Dame Enid's bare hands, and these curtains, she ran them up on the Singer sewing machine before she bore her 9 children with a gammy hip before she went into Parliament and built this garage herself before repairing the Comcar to get it. I was like, oh my God, this woman is extraordinary. So if I looked knowing, I think I was actually looking intimidated. What an extraordinary woman, what an extraordinary Tasmanian. So it is an amazing honour to be here with all of you again tonight. You were wrong on one thing, Gav, which is that was not my last trip to Tasmania. In fact, I've been here a couple of times since. I just haven't quite made it up to Braddon, so forgive me. That's clearly on my next trip. It is genuinely wonderful to be back here today and to be representing our leader, Peter Dutton, who apologises for not being able to be here in person. I hope you don't feel like you got second fiddle. I'll try and make it up to you, but Peter did have a family commitment tonight that he couldn't avoid. As a party, we are just so lucky to have the representatives that you've chosen to send to Canberra. I call them all my friends. Obviously, you know, Brad Gav is just an extraordinary human being who works every day for his constituents. And we had a terrific time in the campaign speaking to retirees. We did a pretty robust forum, if I remember rightly, and I also got my photograph taken with a giant penguin, so that's always a good thing. I did a street walk with Wendy Askew and Bridget Archer. I've got to say, Wendy Askew is such a dear friend. I'm so sorry that she's not here today. She really is. She's one of those people, I'm sure you find it too. She's like everybody's sister, everybody's aunt, she's everybody's favourite.
She's one of the things that you look for most in your colleagues is that they are reliable. Well, there is nobody more reliable than Senator Wendy Askew, and the work that she does as whip is just invaluable. So I'm sorry that she's not here tonight. I know she is hobbling terribly with those knees, but she's a ripper of a friend. I do have others here tonight, though, in Senators John O'Doniam and Claire Chandler and Richard Colbeck. Let me first tell you a couple of stories about each of them. Richard Colbeck and I have broken all the rules of the Jenkins Review. Every time I see him, I across the hallway, I'll yell out, hey there, Silver Fox. And everybody's horrified that I do this, like it's some sort of predatory thing. But it's because he wears his little sort of silver thylacine, is that what they're called, thylacine? The Tasmanian tiger on his thing. Anyway, it sort of shocks everybody. But yes. So if you ever get a chance to call Richard the Silver Fox, you'll know why you do it. Claire Chandler, gosh, I love Claire. When Claire first joined the Senate, people said to her, because of, I think it's the sort of the brunette factor, they said, hey, you look like a young Jane Hume. Sadly, now everybody says to me, hey, you look like an old Claire Chandler. I'll take it as a compliment, I think. And my dear friend and benchmate for many, many years, John O'Doniam, who always keeps me laughing in the Senate. He is one of, I think, our most talented rising stars. The beard, of course, is there so that the ladies from the Tasmanian Senate, from the Labor Party, don't kiss him on the cheek naturally every time they see him. I have never seen a more coquettish group of women than the female Labor senators, all of them. John will say something to them across the room, Carol, have you done your hair today? Or, Senator Helen Polly, is that a new top you're wearing? And you should see them. There's, oh my. Talk about, disarming. Can I also acknowledge somebody that I did a little bit of campaigning alongside of during the election campaign, and that was Susie Bauer, and I'm so pleased to hear that she has retreated. What a fantastic candidate for Lions. I'm looking forward to her working alongside her after the next election. Can I also acknowledge, obviously, your Premier Jeremy Rockcliffe. Can I say, you are a legend in my eyes. Those national cabinets must be a nightmare. You are a lonely little petunia in an onion. And I thank you very much for flying the flag of the only Liberal Premier in the entire country. So please keep up. I've just spotted my old colleague Erica Betts out there too, and Eric, very good to see you tonight. Can I also thank Chris Gatenby? I can't understand why, a young, talented political operative with a young family, would only want to do a thankless task that goes unpaid for only one term. It's just beyond me. But can I thank you? That was a joke. Thank you very much for your service as State President of the Tasmanian Division. You are much admired around the country for the work that you have done. Can I equally say the same to Peter Colson as the State Director? If Victoria is to operate in its business as usual way, we will be stealing your State Director sometime soon. I'm only joking again, I promise I won't do that to you just yet, anyway. But most importantly, can I please tonight acknowledge all of you. This is a terrific room, a fantastic turnout of enthusiastic Liberals. And all of the people that I have mentioned just before, they could not do their jobs. We could not do our jobs without people like you. The support for the party organisation and the support of our members is absolutely invaluable. The membership and our supporters, they are the weft and the weave of the fabric of our party. Without you, there's no campaign. Without you, there's no platform. There's no representation of our values. So thank you all for the work that you've done and the work that you do to continue to support the Liberal Party of Tasmania. The next election is only ever just around the corner, and already we've seen this extraordinary arrogance this week of Prime Minister Albanese, who seems very keen to take a really bad policy, this Housing Australia Future Fund, reintroduce it and bring on a trigger for a double dissolution election. That would catalyse a double dissolution election. Well, I want to say good luck to you, mate, because we know that where that can go. As a party, though, it does mean that we need to be ready. We need to be ready to seek the support of the Australian people as a united team to deliver the best government, the government that they deserve. And under Peter Dutton, I can assure you that we are seeing that strong leadership, that united team, and we are delivering results even just 1 year into opposition, which I think is something that you as Liberals can be proud of, even in opposition, even in the dark days of opposition. And standing here in Tasmania, obviously, I feel very proud, as I said, that it is the only state with a Liberal government, a state which bucked the trend in 2022 as well. That 2022 election was pretty scarring for a lot of us, and I suppose it was an honour, or maybe it was a penance for my sins, to have been given the job by the federal president to conduct the federal election review alongside former federal director Brian Loughnane. And this is the first time that a sitting member has been asked to conduct a review. So it was something that I took very, very seriously. It was very clear when we did the review, when Brian and I did the review, that not all states are created equal, and not all states, not all divisions have been able to deliver results like we've seen in Tasmania. There were, however, despite the differences between states' experiences, lessons I think for everybody in that review. We're fully aware, Brian and I we're fully aware of the context and the significance of this particular election. And the reason why is because, of course, next year we have a very serious anniversary. Our party turns 80 years old next year. Nearly 80 years ago, Sir Robert Menzies brought together a very disparate group of political organisations. Some of them were free traders, some of them were protectionists, some of them were feminists, some of them were traditionalists, some of them were conservative, some of them were more progressive, but they all came together. Despite those differences, he brought them in under the one umbrella, and he articulated a set of principles and a set of values on which they could all agree. They could all agree. Aspiration and enterprise and prosperity through lower taxes and through fiscal responsibility. Empowerment of the individual through smaller government, and respect for freedom and for choice. Equality under the law, personal responsibility and civic duty for a functioning democracy. The centrality of family to the fabric of our society, and the importance of small business to the economy. And while these disparate groups set aside their petty differences and found that common ground, Sir Robert also gave them a common purpose to achieve those values. It was very, very clear. The job of the brand new Liberal Party 80 years ago was to win elections and to defeat Labor. And that was it. Win elections, defeat Labor. And so when we reach this milestone next year of 80 years, it's a time to celebrate, certainly, all that we have achieved as an organisation and as a movement, as a political movement. But it's also a time to turn our eyes to the future. Our party has been entrusted by the Australian people to lead our country 19 times since we were founded. Now, when given the choice, those same group of voters have only given Labor that honour 11 times. And for those people that say that our best times are behind us, I want you to consider this. Of those 19 victories, 7 were from the most recent 10 elections. Don't write us off yet. We must remind ourselves of this, though. Our success is not guaranteed. Indeed, and I don't want to frighten people here, but our very existence as a party isn't guaranteed. There is nothing in our constitution that says that the Liberal Party must inevitably be one of the two parties of government in our Westminster system. It only happens because we earn it. It is a right that we earn, not one that is bestowed upon us by anyone. So on this 80-year anniversary, among the celebrations, among those reflections, we must also ask ourselves, will the party be here in another 80 years? Now, as members, securing our future is all of our responsibilities, because let's face it, while we're in this room today, it's not just our party. It belongs to us, certainly, but it also belongs to those first members that took that chance, that set some of their interests aside and said, no, there's a bigger cause at stake here. And it also belongs to those people who will be the future members of our party, who will take our values forward. How we leave our party to the next generation will mark the standard of our success. So to answer that question, will our party be here in another 80 years? We must look to how we carry our duties today as custodians, because that's what we are. We are custodians of this great party. Our responsibility is to ensure that all of our efforts go towards securing a movement and an organisation that is bigger, that is stronger than the one that we joined. Our recent review of the federal election was an opportunity to consider these issues, and the review had over 600 submissions. We conducted 50 separate interviews with all living former Prime Ministers too, I should say, and we considered information from every single one of our divisions. This was an overwhelming response to the 2022 election. It was about 3 or 4 times the size of interest in a review than any previous election. And it was also the first time, you should know, that the review was published online and available to anybody within the party or outside. That was entirely deliberate. We wanted to reflect the imperative that all of us understand the challenge that our party is facing. So if you haven't, I would encourage you to go and read it, because it's as useful for a local branch as it is for a local member or for a federal and state division. It first of all noted that we are living in a very, very different political environment than the one that we experienced last century. Demographic and electoral changes are here, and they are here with us to stay. In order to win elections, we need to recognise this change in the electoral landscape, and we need to recognise that there's no such thing anymore as a safe seat. Now, that's a throwaway line, and lots of people use it. Oh, there's no such thing as a safe seat anymore. But let me put it to you this way. Back in 2004, 86 of the 150 seats in the House of Representatives were won on first preference. In 2013, that number had dropped to 50. So from 2/3 to half. Sorry, from half to 1/3. And then in 2022, at the federal election, only 15 seats nationally were won on first preferences, and that's to both parties, all parties, I should say. You can see how very different the electoral landscape is now to where it was only a few years ago. The review found 3 significant factors. We didn't perform in the cities and the outer suburbs in the way that we used to do. We've lost support for a multicultural Australia, and for the first time, we lost the female vote, the majority of the female vote, in every single age group. Every single one. Women across the board are not voting in majority for the Liberal Party. So let me break down that female vote a little bit further. In the top 30 seats around the country, with the largest number of voters who are professional, white-collar women, those aspirational voters that we have always relied on, the Liberal Party used to hold 15, half. It now holds 3. Expand that to the top 50 seats that have the most number of female professionals, and again, we used to have half, we used to have 25, and we now hold 10. So for us today, it's very easy to see, and we know, because we've been members for a long time, that we always have been the party of women, the party of Dame Enid Lyons, what an extraordinary legend, the party of my hero, Margaret Guilfoyle. We have so much that we can be proud of here. We believe fundamentally in providing opportunities for women in society and in the economy and in personal lives, and our history is something that we should be so proud of. But we need to make sure that the women of today, and indeed the women of the next generation, know that we can be a party for them tomorrow, not just yesterday. The only demographic class where the Liberal Party and the national parties have strongholds is in rural electorates. And while we did very well in regional seats, we are a party of government, and no party that is seeking to form government has a pathway to the majority solely through regional and rural seats. We don't have to change what it is that we believe in. We don't have to change who we are. We don't have to change what we value. But we do need to find a way to make that relevant and appealing. Very, very simply, we can't stay in our corner any longer. We need to reach out further. So the review outlines some recommendations on how we can be more reflective of the Australian community that we are seeking to represent. There are 49 separate recommendations in the review, and I'm not going to go through them all. You'll be very pleased to know. But I do want to highlight just a couple of them. Because while each state had a very unique experience, the result in the 2022 election, there were some common themes. There are a number of recommendations around organisational structure and organisational behaviour that are specifically directed to state divisions. And on this issue, as with many others, Brian Loughnane and I chose to put niceties aside and to speak very, very plainly. The Liberal Party is not a lobby group. The Liberal Party is not a think tank. We're not a make-work scheme. We're not a retirement plan. We're not a debating society. This is not a fiefdom. And while each of us here, I'm sure, like me, have made lifelong friends in the Liberal Party, we're not a social group. We're a political party. We're a political party with one objective: to win elections, to form government, and to advance Australia based on our shared Liberal values. So to do this, we have to be a much more effective political operation and appeal to a broader Australian community. It's a precondition for revival that this occurs. Now, Brian Loughnane and I were determined to offer solutions, not just point out what the problems were and make recommendations and aspirations. So, for example, we have recommended some new infrastructure to support female membership, retention and engagement. The recommendation of a new network, and you can tell that I named this one, the Margaret Guilfoyle Network, would be run by the Federal Secretariat. It is a centralised, professional women's network and talent pool where the party can retain links to women whose talents and experience and potential are vital to our party's development. Now, you will soon hear more about the Margaret Guilfoyle Network, and I want to thank Claire Chandler for agreeing to join the board of the inaugural board of the Margaret Guilfoyle Network. I am hoping that we will have something that we can present to you that will be an attractive value add to female membership by the time we start celebrating those 80-year anniversaries. The review is now with the Federal Executive, and I know that as leaders of our movement, they are very much committed to evolving our party to meet the challenges that the review identifies. It's going to be an ongoing process, there's no doubt about that, well beyond one electoral cycle. But the work of gearing our movement towards the challenge of the next election is clearly the first step. And make no mistake, the Labor government deserves to see the full force of accountability from a strong Liberal movement at the next election. Because there were plenty of Australians out there that were promised that they'd be better off under Labor. They were promised cheaper energy, they were promised cheaper mortgages, they were promised cheaper childcare. And I only have one question for those Australians: do you really feel better off today than you did a year ago? I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. As the chair of the Cost of Living Committee, I was in Hobart quite recently with both Jono and Claire, and clearly Tasmanians do not feel better off. They're realising that under Labor, that old adage is true, under Labor you always pay more. Your federal team is leading the Liberal fight back across the nation, and at the next election, I can assure you that we will have bold and visionary policies that will reflect our values, that will make you proud. They will be policies that will preserve what is great about our nation and which push our economy forward to make life better for all Australians, raising the standard of living, the first responsibility of any good government. We have recommitted Australians to Australians being able to access superannuation to buy their first home, because home ownership, owning a stake in Australia, is so important to making sure that you are a part of its prosperity. We will get more gas into our system to lower power bills. We've started having a conversation about new nuclear technologies, the only credible path to a net zero future. We will restore the 23.9% tax to GD cap, a fundamental guardrail in a budget that has been abandoned. And we will ensure that women have more affordable and more accessible health items as treatments. We will crack down on big tech and sports betting advertising on our television to protect our children. And we will remove ideology from our classrooms and make teaching the basics, reading, writing, mathematics, a priority. And most importantly, we will embed fiscal responsibility into every single decision that we make. Though the choice may seem obvious to us, I can assure you, by the time we get to the next election, that choice will be very, very clear to all. Now, our success at the election is not assured. It is going to take not just our hard work, but yours too. It is a collective effort. As parliamentarians, as candidates, as party officials, as members, to deliver that important change and bring the best of our movement to the fore. To present our best selves to a voting public that, let's be honest, depends on us to do so. It depends on us to be organised, to be committed, to be responsible, to be reflective of them, of their views, of their values, and of their fears and their dreams. So, I began with a question. Where will the Liberal Party be in another 80 years? Will we be here? Now, I can't guarantee that answer, because as important as a review is to an election, the answer doesn't lie in a review. It does lie, though, in this room. When the history of our party is written, you will have all played a part, all of you. We are the custodians of our great party and of its future, today and tomorrow, every single one of us. If we want to secure and deliver Liberal values to the next generation, we are going to need to work for it. We're not the first generation of Liberals to have faced challenges to our movements or indeed our organisations, but we cannot allow ourselves to be the first generation to ignore our role in overcoming those challenges. Our job, all of us in this room, is to provide a better, a larger, a stronger, a more dynamic, a more inspirational party to the next generation, and thus ensure Liberal governments for the prosperity and progress of our nation for another 80 years. Thank you so much for having me along tonight.